Hello all, welcome to Quantifiers. So today now the cat is done and dusted. So we're gonna focus on the next other management entrance test. And now SNAP is there in a few days to go and MAT is going on. So let's see for one of the important topic that appears in all of these OMEDs, that is a verbal reasoning. So what do you understand by verbal reasoning when I say that the topic is on verbal reasoning? So generally, we need to understand few things about it. That it is no doubt the name specifies verbal, but verbal here is just limited to reading and understanding the sentence. But what is more required here in this topic of a verbal reasoning is your reasoning skills. And generally, this topic appears in a reasoning section rather than the verbal section, right? Now, to talk about this verbal reasoning, it's not like here, one of the factor that actually deters a lot of competitive exams to put this particular topic is the subjectivity, right? So what is your opinion may differ from my opinion, okay? So that is subjectivity here is a gray area. So we're going to talk about this subjectivity further when we're going to discuss this particular topic on verbal reasoning. So let's get into the next slide and understand the things. Okay, so yeah, so what is verbal reasoning? So verbal reasoning is basically a reasoning based on statements. I've told you earlier also that it is more about applying your reasoning skills and logic skills. So yeah, it tests one's logic and reasoning skills. And yeah, it has to be answered at a high speed. Now, you know that a SNAP is a speed is a determiner for SNAP as an exam, right? So here, with those kinds of the exams where you don't have, in fact, a 1 minute per question also in those kinds of the paper, you're generally going to find the verbal reasoning because this is an easy go topic. You can do it quickly in case if you know what are assumptions, what are inferences, what are conclusions, what are strong and weak arguments, then you'll be able to make a sense of it. So it does not require, I would say, a minute is also more for that. So it does not require too much of a time when it comes to a topic on verbal reasoning. Yeah, your mental alertness, your keenness, your quick thinking, your keen observation are essential for tackling these kinds of verbal reasoning tests. So let's see what are the different types of verbal reasoning questions that can be asked in a competitive exam. So generally there are 6 types of the questions, but for this particular class, I'm gonna limit myself to the 4 types of the questions. So the very first is an implied assumptions, strong and weak arguments, inference, and the questions based on conclusion, statements, and course of action. So we're going to take each of them one by one and we're going to discuss them in detail. So what do you understand by assumptions? So assumptions is something that our entire life is based on. So every now and then we actually make an assumption. So let's understand what actually the assumptions are. So in case if you're able to understand the assumptions where your task is half done, right? Now, in a very technical word, in case if I have to say, an assumption is something that is assumed, supposed, or taken for granted. And since the word is implied or implicit assumption, that means something that is hidden. So it is hidden, therefore implicit. Okay. Now, before we get into the next slide, let's understand what the assumptions are basically. In a very simple word, in case if you, I'm sure that you must have gone through the topic of critical reasoning for your CAT, and you know these terminologies that any argument is basically divided into 2 parts. It's premise and a conclusion, right? So any kind of a missing link between a premise or a conclusion is basically an assumption. So in a very simple word, an assumption is an unstated fact. It is an unstated fact. It acts as a missing link between a fact and a conclusion. Okay. I'll give you the example. So just for a time being, just stay with me. And third and the most important aspect of the assumption is that it is always with respect to author or speaker. So when I'm saying something or when I'm writing something, there is something that is going on in my mind. I don't write everything on a paper. I don't say everything on the face, right? So there are a lot of things that I actually assume in my mind. So that things that I assume in my mind becomes the assumptions. Okay. For example, I would say that assumptions are rather logical implications which are unstated but could be hinted through within a sentence, though within a sentence, right? So let's take an example. For example, I'm saying the car is blue. Therefore, it cannot be of Sam. Right? So I'm giving a statement. The car is blue, therefore it cannot be of Sam. So what is the fact here? The fact is the car is blue. And what is the conclusion? Therefore it cannot be of Sam. But is there any missing link? Is there something that I, being the speaker, is assuming? So I'm saying that the car is blue, therefore it cannot be of Sam. So what I'm assuming? So I'm assuming that the Sam do not have any car which is blue in color. Okay. So this is actually my assumption. So I'm saying the car is blue, therefore it cannot be of Sam. So the Sam has some different color car. This is my assumption. Okay. So I've not written this assumption, but that is something that is actually going inside my brain, right? Now let's say your last chadda has Amir Khan in it. Now Amir, I don't know it's single A or double A, but let's say. So last chadda is Amir Khan. It is based on Forrest Gump. Therefore, it is going to be hit. Right? So there are facts or the premises. So Lal Singh Chadda has Amir Khan in it. Okay. The second fact is it is based on Forrest Gump. And then on the basis of these two premises, I've given a conclusion that it is going to be hit. Right? So what I'm assuming, is there any assumption? So I'm saying one is Lal Singh Chadda has Amir Khan in it. Therefore, the movie is going to be hit. So how this fact and a conclusion is related? Am I assuming something? Am I thinking something? So one of the assumption is that Amir Khan, any of the Amir Khan movies is always a hit, and this movie also has a Amir Khan, so this movie is going to be hit certainly, right? And secondly, I'm saying that this movie is based on Forrest Gump, therefore it is going to be hit. So is there any missing link between Forrest Gump and hit? Is there anything that I'm assuming? So maybe I'm assuming that Forrest Gump was a super duper movie, okay? It was a super hit, blockbuster hit. So this movie is based on Forrest Gump, so it will gonna repeat the history, right? So these are some of the assumptions, right? Now this I'm not stated when I was saying that Lal Singh Chadda has Amir Khan in it, therefore the movie is going to be hit. So there's some unstated facts that was going inside my brain that I was taking for granted, that I was actually supposing, I was assuming. So that actually becomes your assumption. So I hope you now able to understand a little bit of what the assumptions are. And one more very simple example, let's say a wife says to the husband, let's go for a movie. Okay, the normal day-to-day story, and maybe not with you guys. So wife says to the husband, let's go for a movie, but husband says, I have only 200 rupees. Okay, on the basis of which the wife concluded, okay, we are not going for movie. Is there any missing link? What is the assumption? So wife says, let's go for a movie. Husband says, I have only 200 rupees. Wife says, okay, we are not going for a movie. So how having a 200 rupees and not going for a movie? What does the wife assume? So husband says that I have 200 rupees and wife says, okay, we are not going for a movie. So what is the wife assuming? Why she said that we're not going for a movie? What is the missing link? What does she assume? Yeah. So she assumed that the movie tickets are more than 200 rupees. And my husband has only 200 rupees and he has no ATM cards, no Google Pay, no another form of the money that he has with him, right? So these were the assumptions of the wife. So assumptions in a very simple language, it is something which is an unstated fact, which is being taken for granted or supposed by the author or the speaker, okay? It acts as a missing link between a fact and a conclusion, right? Now, let's see, you can pause this particular video and can have a look at this particular question and then you can come to understand the explanations. For example, let's say the statement is saying, the teacher declared that he will be teaching grammar to the students. So what assumptions can be there? So the teacher declared that he will be teaching grammar to the students. So now students may be willing to learn grammar. So now let's understand that this particular statement is with respect to speaker, and the speaker here in this case scenario indirectly is a teacher, because it's the teacher who declared that he will be willing to teach, he will be teaching grammar to the students, right? So one of the assumptions, so I'm saying that I'm willing to teach you something. So one of my assumption is that I'm assuming that you guys are interested to learn, right? You guys are willing to learn grammar. So a valid assumption, right? Now, second, students wish to crack any competitive exams, competitive exams? No. Okay. The statement actually talks about competitive exams. Now, keeping yourself in the shoe of the students who are willing to learn grammar right now, maybe you're going to feel that this is the correct assumption, but we have to base ourselves on the statements that are being stated in the passage. Okay. You cannot bring your outside information specifically for the questions like assumptions, right? So, since the statement is silent over whether the students are going to crack any competitive exams or not, or they are learning grammar to crack competitive exams, we cannot comment over it. Hence, it is not valid. It is irrelevant. Now, teacher knows how to teach grammar. This is actually a valid assumption. So, when I'm saying, or when the teacher is saying that I will be teaching grammar to the students, so what is the teacher assuming? That I know grammar, okay? And secondly, I know how to teach, okay? Otherwise, why would she say that he will be willing to teach grammar in case if he does not know how to teach, or in case if he does not know grammar, okay? The student may be able to understand what he teaches, and the student may not be able to understand what he teaches. So, which out of the two, right? So the student may be able to understand. See, again, remember that this particular assumption is with respect to the teacher. So when I'm saying that I will be teaching you something. So one of my assumption is that whatever I'm gonna teach you, you're gonna actually understand. In case if I'm assuming that the students are not gonna learn anything, then why even I'm making the efforts to teach you? Okay. So that is the case. So by this, I think so you're going to get a rough of an idea about the assumptions, and the assumptions are a little bit clear to you. And of course, you can always ping us on our WhatsApp group or on our YouTube channel to understand wherever you have any kind of the queries. We can more than happy to help you with that, right? So this is how the questions of verbal reasoning will going to come in your paper. So generally, there are the directions that is given to you, and these are the options from where you have to pick up. So how the things will go, you're going to see in a couple of slides, there is a statement that is given to you. And on the basis of the statement, there is an assumption 1 and an assumption 2. Sometimes they can increase it to assumption 3 also. But generally the statement, there is a statement and then there are two assumptions. And based on these options, you need to pick up option 1 if only assumption 1 is correct. You need to pick up option 2 if only assumption 2 is implicit. 3 is either or. Now, either or is a very rare possibility. Generally, it can be there in your strong and weak arguments, but assumptions are very tricky, okay? Mark 4 if neither one nor second is implicit. Mark 5 if both are implicit. So, you need to pick up this. So, we're going to solve one question and things will become all the more clear. But for a time being, just remember all these instructions because I'll be directing you with the options, right? So let's see this question. Again, you can give it a pause and you can go through this question before coming to the explanation part of it. So this is how the question statement comes in your paper. There's a statement that is given to you, and then there is an assumption 1, and then there is an assumption 2. And then on the basis of mark 1, if assumption 1 is 2, mark 2, and so on and so forth, right? So Tanu asked her servant to get vegetables from the market. So what all things is the Tanu is assuming here, okay? So the servant knows the location of the market. That is true as an assumption, right? Why it is true as an assumption? Because when Tanu is saying that you should go to the market to get vegetables, one of the assumption is that the servant knows the market. He knows the location of the market. He knows how to walk, right? He can go to the market, right? So all of these things are the assumptions. Now, the markets may not have vegetables. Is this the assumption of Tanu? So in case if this is the assumption, why Tanu is even asking a servant to go and buy vegetables? Is she just challenging the servants to buy vegetables? Right? So there might be a chance that vegetables are not in a market. Okay. So the vegetables are not there in a market, or let's say the stock of vegetables are yet to arrive, but this is not the Tanu's assumption. In case if Tanu was assuming that the market may not have vegetables, so then why even if she is asking her servant to go to vegetables from the market, to get the vegetables from the market, right? So in this case, the answer is only assumption 1 is implicit. That is your option number 1, right? I hope with this example, you are able to understand. Let's solve a couple of more questions based on, yeah, when it comes to the verbal reasoning and specifically for the questions like your assumptions, you need to be really careful with the extreme words like only, all, definitely, certainly, best, okay, most, okay. So all these kinds of the words play a very vital role. Sometimes they can make your sentence totally incorrect, right? Just by adding one word in a verbal language and by omitting even a one word in a verbal language, the options can vary. Now let's see this particular question. So Abhishek, dissatisfied with present salary and perks, join another company. So what are the assumptions here? The new company gives a good hike in salary to all new joinees? Were we talking only about Abhishek or is it related to all the new joinees? So not your assumption. Present company runs in losses. So Abhishek, dissatisfied with the present salary and perks, joins another company. But can we assume that the present company runs in loss? Maybe the present company does not feel Abhishek competitive enough. So they're not paying him the kind of the salary, right? So, but present company runs in a losses. This is not my assumption, right? Maybe they are paying excellent to some other employees, but they are totally ignoring Abhishek for that matter, right? So in this case, none of these is the answer. So none of the options are implicit. Now, please count your cash carefully before leaving the cash counter or notice at the bank counter. So you're going to find that everywhere in your school notice board also there is a notice. So what are things that the faculties, the principals are assuming when they're putting a notice on a school notice board? So they're assuming first thing that the students will going to read the notice board. This is my very first assumption, right? That the students will gonna come to the notice board and they will going to read the notice board. Secondly, they'll be able to understand the language in whichever the language it is actually being written, right? Fourth, they'll be able to follow the instructions, okay? And fourth, the reason that they have put the notice, that is actually desirable by the schools or the official authorities. So again, in a railways also, there is a line to stop train, pull chain, otherwise a penalty of 1,000 rupees and so on, right? So there's always assumption behind it. So please count your cash carefully before leaving the cash counter or notice at the bank counter. So one of the assumption is it is the duty of the bank. So it is always ensure that it is the duty of the issuing authority to issue a notice, and that duty is a valid assumption, right? So it is the duty of the bank to ensure that the people get it is correct. That is the reason that they are putting this particular notice board. Unless forewarned, some people may not count the cash and may take it to be their correct amount. This is also a valid assumption. Now, why this is an assumption? Because that is actually the main reason why they have put this particular notice. So when I'm putting this particular notice that you should collect cash, so what I'm assuming that many people, in case if they're not informed before or they are forewarned, they may not count the cash. So this is my assumption. That is the reason that the need to put this particular notice actually came into the question, right? So here, both the assumptions are implicit. Let's get into the next question. So cinema ticket rates have been revised to meet the increased cost of hiring movie reels. So cinema ticket rates have been revised to meet the increased cost of hiring movie reels. So the ticket rates partly depend on the hiring charges for the movie reels. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. Now, why it is correct? Why it is an implicit assumption? Because what is the statement saying? That the ticket rates have been revised. Revised here means increase only, because ticket rates have been increased to meet the increased cost of hiring movie reels. Okay. So ticket rates have been increased because of the increase in hiring movie reels. So one of the assumption is that the hiring movie reels forms a part of ticket rates. That is the ticket rates partly, and the partly is absolutely the correct as a word, right? So the ticket rates partly depend on the hiring charges for movie reels. Earlier, the rates were very low. This is now a subjectivity. What is very low? How would I know? So that means that earlier the ticket may be, let's say, 250, and now to meet the increased cost of hiring movie reels, they have increased the ticket to 275. But how would we know that the rates were very low? This cannot be commented. Hence, only assumption 1 is implicit and option is your one option. Right? So by this, let's do one more question. Let's do the last question here. Now, UPSC interview conducted for selecting people for jobs measures the personality traits of the candidates routinely. So UPSC interview conducted for selecting people for jobs measures the personality traits of the candidates routinely. Now, personality trait is a measurable entity. Is this the valid assumption? Yeah, this is a valid assumption, because in case if it is not a measurable entity, why they are doing it? So what is written? That UPSC interview conducted for selecting people for job measures the personality trait of the candidates routinely. So when I say that I will going to measure the personality traits of the candidates routinely, one of my assumption is that I can actually measure personality traits, right? Now, personality traits are important factors with regards to the performance of the job. That is why they are judging it at the first place, right? So UPSC interview measures the personality traits of the candidates routinely. Okay, so one of my assumption is that why gonna measures the personality traits of the candidates routinely, because measuring the personality traits are important to judge the performance of the job. So both assumptions here are implicit. So by this, we are done with this assumption. Let's get into the next topic, which is your strong and weak argument. Now, what happened in a case of a strong and a weak argument is that they put a question to you, right? And then there's a question statement, and then there are two argument one and argument two. Now, argument one may say yes and then give a reason. Argument two will gonna say no and may give the reason. Okay, and again it depends upon, let's say, it's not necessary that argument one always says yes and the argument two always say no. Okay, it can be vice versa. So for the strong and a weak argument, it's an easy topic. It's comparatively easier than your assumptions. You need to understand the tips and techniques that we apply and some do's and don'ts to find out the correct answer. Okay. Before I get into this thing, let's understand. So argument, in case if I'm going to talk in a usually language, it is defined as a conflict of opinion. But as an assumption, I told you that the argument in terms of the reasoning stands for a basic composite structure that has a combination of a premise and a conclusion, right? So that is an argument. Now, how does this question format looks like? So there is a statement, question that is given to you. Then there is an argument one and argument two. The options or the question stems with the 5 choices looks like: mark 1 if only assumption argument 1 is strong, mark 2 if only argument 2 is strong, mark 3 if either. Now, either here plays somewhat a vital role, right? Now, what is the either or option? And in case if we're going to find that the answer is either, it's generally in the case of the strong and a weak argument. Now, what is this either argument one and strong? For example, let us say, should I go outside? Very simple example, right? So there's the question statement, should I go outside? And one argument is saying yes, it will not rain today. So it is saying yes, it will not rain today. And the argument two is saying no, it will rain today. Now here I cannot say both, okay? And both of them maybe are relevant to the question that is being asked. So here in this case scenario, the answer needs to be your option number 3. That is either argument 1 is strong or argument 2 is strong. One of the questions that has been asked in your previous year exams is, let's say, should the parents, new parents, should know the gender of their newborn child, unborn child for that matter, right? Is in the fetus, in the womb of the mother, right? So should are parents justified in knowing the gender of their unborn baby? Now, argument 1 in that question says that no, because it will gonna further increase the problem of female feticide, okay, and so on. Argument 2 says yes, because it is ultimately their kids, okay, and they have got every right to know the gender of their children. Okay, so that is the case. Now in this case, both the arguments are strong. They are strong. Okay, now they cannot go hand in hand together. So one way I cannot say no because it will enhance female feticide, and the another time I'm saying yes because they have the right to do that. Okay, so in this kind of the scenario, the answer is either argument 1 or argument 2. So I hope you now understand what is this option is. Okay, then the fourth is neither argument 1 or second is strong. Both argument 1 and 2 are strong. So again, you don't need to cram all these things. You have to just Carefully read the questions. So reading the questions is very important when it comes to the verbal reasoning. So read questions carefully. So let's get into the next thing. Okay. So yeah, some do's and don'ts for the verbal reasoning is that how do I know that whether the argument is strong or whether the argument is weak? Okay. So there's something for the for the arguments question. So do's is that the first don't I would rather say is that don't compare arguments with each other, okay, or against one another. For example, it is like just need to see argument one as an independent of argument 2 and argument 2 as an independent of argument 1. Okay, so it is not that you cannot read them together, because generally what happened that they may conflict each other. So but you have to see the validity of each of the argument individually. Okay, so evaluate them against the issue, but don't evaluate them against one another. Okay, so just see whether it is valid, it is related to the question statement, but don't compare both of them. Okay, and don't be biased or opined or logically judge them. So there was one question in case of an argument which says that, are nuclear families better than joint families? And one of the arguments says that yes, because in a case of a nuclear family, there is a lot of freedom, right? And second says no, because in a joint family system, there is a division of work and safety is ensured. Okay, so division of work and safety of ensured. Now, one of the students says that, ma'am, I have a nuclear family, but there are all the CCTV cameras on my head every day, right? And another student says, no, ma'am, we stay in a joint family system, and every time my mama is doing all the work and my chachi is sitting idle. So that is not the case, okay? It's not a kahani ghar ghar ki thing which is going on, okay? So you need not be biased, you need not be opined, you need to logically judge them, okay? You need to just keep your all biases at side, and you need to judge them rationally. Okay, don't be emotional or sentimental while judging them. Okay, so look for justifications provided. Always see that it should not be that. No, so should India give Kashmir to Pakistan? Yes, why not? What is this? Why not? Is it even giving you the reason? So you need to always look for the justification which is provided. So it is writing yes, so why? What is the reason behind it? Is it logical? In case if it is saying no, what is the reason behind it? Okay, is it even logical? So these are some of the do's and don'ts that you need to consider here in the case of arguments question, right? Let's see. So this is one of the question. But before that, let's do a quick recap of the argument. So which argument I was going to say is a strong argument, or how would I know whether the argument 1 is strong or not, or so 2 is strong or not? So the strong argument, the very first important is that it should be directly related to question. What does that mean? Okay, sorry. So the first thing is that the strong argument should be directly related to the question statement. Second is, of course, it should be relevant. It should be relevant, okay? And it should provide justification. There should be a rationality that should be there, okay? So it should provide justification. So let's see this question, and the things will become all the more clear after this. Now, it says, should ragging be in colleges be banned, right? Yes, it causes mental trauma to students, and the students have been reported to commit suicide due to it. Now, dude, this is because of the Bollywood movies, or let's say the newspapers. We know that definitely the argument 1 is strong. Okay. Now, let's say, no, it is a way of interaction between seniors and freshers, which helps them to know each other better, which in turn is beneficial for the students in their college life, right? Is this a valid assumption? So at one go, you may feel that it is not the case. Okay, it is not a valid assumption. But again, why not? Okay, why not? Is it the reason is valid? If true, does not it gives enough sufficient ground for you to not ban this activity? Okay, so both of them, in case we're going to read them again together, they both may look like a conflicting, okay, but both of them without conflicting individually, okay, quite at their own, give good enough reasons to ban or to not ban. So in this case, the answer is both argument one and second are strong. Because in case of saying no, then there is a valid reason, okay? And the reason is providing a justification, and it is relevant and it is directly related to your question statement, right? So this is how the question on strong and weak arguments will gonna appear in your paper. We're gonna solve a couple of questions based on it now. Now let's say, should medical students compulsorily serve in rural areas for a stipulated period of time before they are awarded a degree? Now let's say argument one says no. The medical students, just like any other professional, should be free to choose the area where they wish to work for. Okay, so why should they be exclusive? Okay, why should they be exclusivized, right? So should medical students, why not everybody from every field, a marketing person, a finance person, and everybody for that matter, okay? Why only medical students, okay? So they, just like any other professional, should be free to choose the area where they wish to work for. Argument 2 says yes, this will help to improve the health infrastructure of rural areas. These areas are totally lacking in terms of health services. Now, this is also a valid answer, okay? The second line gives you good justification that why medical students compulsorily serve in the rural areas, because these areas are totally lacking in terms of health services. So what is required, okay? That they should contribute to the areas where the medical facilities are lacking. And secondly, can you see here? It's a stipulated period of a time. It is not for a lifelong, okay? It is just stipulated. So maybe for some period of a time. So there's no harm with this option. So in this case, both the arguments are strong. Now, you remember I told you initially at one go that the verbal reasoning has a gray area, because some of you may not agree to this, okay? Why, in suppose you're a medical professional, why should we go to the village? Okay, there are not basic amenities there, right? But you're going to think in that case. So there's always a difference in perspective. There is a difficulty in subjectivity. That is the reason that the accuracy here is a gray area. So suppose there are 100 questions on a verbal reasoning that you're solving in a day, out of which you're able to score 80 correct, then that's a decent accuracy. Okay. So don't go after your life that you need to have a verbal reasoning 100% accuracy. For the 100% accuracy, you have the topic which is critical reasoning, right? Now, let's see the next question. Should India play host to international sporting events like the Commonwealth Games and the Asian Games? So right now we hosted ICC World Cup, right? Now, argument one says, yes, this will help India to develop its sports infrastructure. Absolutely correct, right? There's no harm in that. This is correct. This is a justification. No, there are many other areas that requires fund, and wasting money and wasting huge sums of money for conducting sports events is a criminal waste of resources. What is this option? Okay, so there are many other areas that require funds, and wasting huge sums of money for conducting sports event is a criminal waste of resources. There's a budget. The budget is the allocation of resources to every specific sector. Okay, and how do we know that the other areas that require funds and wasting huge pot of money? So in case if we are not spending on sports, we are spending on something upliftment, we're not sure of this. So here only argument one is strong. I hope that makes sense to you all. Right, let's see the third question based on it. So should betting be, wow, okay, legalized in the game of cricket? So all your Dream 11 and all that, they're gonna be cherishing. So yes, this will make the earnings from betting legal, and this in turn would be a source of revenue for the exchequer. Absolutely correct. No, if betting is legalized, then cricket will no longer remain a gentleman game. What is this? Okay. So no, this is not the answer. So the answer is only argument one is strong. I hope it's clear. It's an easy peasy question, not a very tricky one for you to figure out. Now, should political parties be allowed to participate in student union elections? Okay. Yes, this will help political parties to involve students in the national decision-making process. What is this national decision-making process? How political parties participating in student union elections will gonna make students in the national decision making process. So is it the students that are participating in political parties or the political parties that are participating in students unions election, right? So this is not the case. And what is this national decision making process? How political parties, in case if they're allowed to participate in student unions elections, how would they gonna involve the youth in national decision making process? And are you discussing national decision making things with the student union elections? So not the correct answer. No, the objectives of a student elections are very different from the objectives of a political party. Now this sounds good, and this is actually your correct argument. Because should political parties be allowed? No, because their agenda is, or the objectives are totally different from the objectives of a political party. So there cannot be any kind of a consensus for that matter. Okay. Let's see the next question. So the next topic is on statement and conclusion. So far what we have done is a statement and assumption, statement, strong and weak argument, and the third up in the row is a statement and a conclusion. Now the conclusion one is an easy and it's not very tricky. Like the assumptions, you might gonna find some bit of the trouble, but conclusion is comparatively and easier, right? Now let's see what is the conclusion first of all. A statement is a formal account of certain facts. A conclusion is a judgment or decision reached after consideration about the given statement. So see, again, remember, arguments, I told you that it is a combination of a fact and a conclusion. So author gives fact 1, fact 2, fact 3. So he gives all these facts. Why he has given the fact, okay? To reach a one particular point that he desperately wants to convince to us, and that particular point is actually known as conclusion. So it is a judgment or decision reached after consideration about the given statement. So there are a couple of statements that is given to you on the basis of which you reach a particular conclusion. Okay. To reach the conclusion, think about the information given in the statement. There is no need to use, assume, or add any further information. So you just need to stick to whatever the facts are being given, and the conclusion will definitely be based on whatever is being written by the author. Okay. So to understand the conclusion, I would say a very simple thing. Since your inference is an unstated conclusion, right? So inference also becomes a part of your conclusion, because by the nature an inference is actually your unstated conclusion, right? So let's go to the next slide and I'm going to talk about this thing further. So what are conclusions in life? Okay, so conclusions can be something, just a very simple thing. So there is something, statements that is given to you, anything that you can logically derive from the statement. Okay, so anything that you can logically derive from the statement can be your conclusion. For example, here, all males are humans, Ram is male. So from this, can you derive that Ram is a human? This is your, what do you call, deductive reasoning for that matter. Okay, your inference is, because by the nature, so what is an inference? It is an unknown conclusion, okay, or it is a conclusion drawn about unknown on the basis of known. So something that is given to you on the basis of which you logically derive something which is not given to you. So inference is, I'm sure that you know by the virtue of you giving your CAT exams. Next is the derivative. Since sports is good, so it should be compulsory. Now this kind of the thing is known as an inductive reasoning. But again, your what are the conclusions? Okay, so it is that I've given some facts, but there's one idea. So sometimes problems are given in the facts and the solution can become your conclusion. Okay. Sometimes there's a lot of, let's say, examples are given, and then the idea behind giving the example can become your solution. Okay. Sometimes some problems are given, and then okay, so I've already written the course of action could be the conclusion. Sometimes restatement of the second line, last line can also be conclusion. But nonetheless, I would just say or suggest is that look at the options from the point that whether it can be logically derived from the statement that is given. Can we safely derive this thing from the statements that is given? In case if we can safely derive that, that means that that particular thing is a conclusion. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So again, how the instructions will gonna follow. So the instructions will more or less remain the same. Conclusion 1 follows, 2 in conclusion second follows, either or, very rare, neither or nor, both follows. Okay, so that is the case. Let's see the question statements now. So parents are prepared to pay any price for an elite education to their children. Now, on the basis of which can we derive that all parents these days are very well off? What is the problem here? Extreme words, okay? Extreme trigger words. So what the statement is saying that parents are prepared to pay any price for an elite education to their children. But are all parents these days are very well off? We don't know, okay? Now, parents have an obsessive passion. Oh, correct echo word. So they are prepared to pay any price. They have an obsessive passion. Super. For perfect development of their children through good schooling, through elite education to their children. Perfect development. This is something that you can logically conclude. So the correct answer is only conclusion 2 is correct. Okay. Let's move to the next question here. Now, government has spoiled many top-ranking financial institutions by appointing bureaucrats as the directors of these institutions. Okay, so government has spoiled many top-ranking financial institutions. So there was a case, okay, related to RBI where the governor was not from an economics background. So government has spoiled many top-ranking financial institutions by appointing bureaucrats as directors of these institutions. So what can be logically derived? So government should appoint directors of the financial institutes taking into consideration the expertise of the person in the area of finance. Yes. Okay. So maybe there is a problem that it has spoiled many top ranking financial institutions by appointing bureaucrats as directors of these institutions. Then what can be the conclusion? It can be the solution that you should appoint those people as the directors of the financial institution who has the knowledge in the field of finance, right? Now, the director of the financial institute should have expertise commensurate with the financial work carried out by the institute. This is also correct because this is also giving you the suggestion. So there's a problem. So the problem is that the director is not having the knowledge of the finance. So what can be the solution? That the director of the financial institute should have expertise. So here, both the conclusions are correct, right? So I hope you are able to understand the conclusion. So don't be confused by the words like inference, because the inference is nothing but it is a type of conclusion only. So something that you can infer. It's a very easy question. So in a one-day cricket match, the total runs made by a team were 200. Out of this, 160 were made by spinner. Okay. So 200 runs were made and 160 were made by spinner. Now 80% of the team consists of spinner. 80% of the runs were made by the spinner. But where it is written that the 80% of the team consists of spinners. So it is just words, playing with the words here and there. The opening batsmen were spinners. We don't know. What we know is that out of the 200 runs, 160 runs were being made by spinners, but the opening batsmen were spinners. We cannot comment anything on it. Hence, none of them are the correct conclusion. Let's go to the next slide. So, women's organization in just a second. Yeah. So women's organizations in India have welcomed the amendment of the Industrial Employment Rules 1946 to curb sexual harassment at the workplace. Okay. So women's organization in India have welcomed the amendment of industrial employment to curb sexual harassment at the workplace. Sexual harassment of women at the workplace is more prevalent in India as compared to other developed countries. This is something which can be logically conclude. Is it correct? What do you feel, guys? Okay. So sexual harassment of women. Just a second, I was just having a glass of water. Okay. So now what is the statement is saying that the women's organization in India have welcomed the amendment of the Industrial Employment Rules 1946 to curb sexual harassment at the workplace. Now, sexual harassment of the women at workplace is more prevalent in India as compared to other developed countries. We cannot derive this, okay? We just know that women's organization in India have welcomed some amendment. Okay, but what is happening in other developed countries or India has an alarming rate for it? This cannot be logically derived. Now, many organizations in India will stop recruiting women to avoid such problem. What is this? Okay, so again, this cannot be logically derived. So none of these is the correct conclusion. Right? Now, the last one for the day is a statement and a course of action. Now, what happened in a case of a statement and a course of action is, first of all, we need to understand what is a course of action. So, it's a very easy concept. It's a very straightforward concept. So course of action can be, you can say, what happened in these kinds of a question is there is a problem. Okay. Now, the problem can be anything. It can be a moral problem. It can be an ethical problem, legal problem. It can be something related to social problem. Okay. So environmental problem, the problem can be anything. So there's a problem that is given to you, and then there's a course of action 1 and course of action 2. And again, the options remains the same, that mark 1 if only course of action 1 is true, mark 2 if only course of action 2 is correct, either or, neither nor, and both. Okay. So that is the case. Now let's understand what is the course of action. Okay. Now, a course of action is something that is a solution. In a very simple word, it's a solution. It will either going to solve the problem, or it will going to actually reduce the impact of the problem, right? So the course of action will gonna do two things. Either rather, it will gonna solve the problem, okay, or else it will going to reduce the impact, the bad impacts for that matter, okay, the ill effects of the problem, okay. So that is the case. Now, but again, you need to understand that whatever the course of action that you're giving, it should be moral, it should be ethical. Okay, so you cannot get asked to kill people. Okay, so that is not the case. It should be moral and ethical. That is the one thing that you need to keep into consideration. Another is that it should be practically possible. Okay, so what is in case if it is not practically possible? So there was one question in one of the previous year exams that there was a lot of episodes of dacoits and looting in a passenger train, and one of the option is saying that you should deploy one policeman in each compartment. Is it practically possible to deploy one policeman in each compartment of all the passenger trains? Okay. Secondly, the second option was saying that the people before boarding should be tested in the skills of judo and karate, something like this. Okay, but that makes one of the cases. Is it very valid? Can you test each and the people who are boarding passenger train to show us some skills of your martial arts, and then we're going to allow you to board the train? So they're not practically possible, right? So the course of action should be practically possible. Okay. Also, sense of responsibility needs to be shouldered. Okay. So there should be a sense of responsibility. You cannot say that none of the course of action should say that this is not possible. Okay, so what if this is not possible? So this should not be the approach. We can't run away from our responsibilities type options are not your valid course of action. Okay, they should always shoulder some sort of responsibility. Okay, and of course the most important thing is that it should be logical, it should be relevant to the context, it should be sensible to the context. Okay, and yeah, violations, now generally we don't pick up the extreme course of action. So this banning, this murdering, this killing or something like this. Okay, or let's say asking people to leave the job. Okay, firing. So these are extremes, and we don't go for the extreme course of actions. But one thing is that in case if there are some sort of violations, okay, then in that case the violations must be punished. Okay, we're gonna, okay, sorry. So we're gonna solve one question based on it, and then we're gonna understand this criteria of violations must be punished. So just remember this, and I'm gonna bring this particular idea again when we're gonna solve this question. Okay. So let's move to the next slide. Yeah, so the 4 important concepts to follow I've already discussed, but let's see. So the action needs to be logical or sensible to the context. It needs to be eventual. Any action needs to be considered not only keeping immediate temporary effects, but as eventual solutions too. So this kind of a case generally happens in case of your, let's say, health or life hazards. For example, health and life hazards. For example, COVID times, right? So there was an immediate action that was being taken. So immediate action is that to break the chain, you were asked to stay at home. Okay. So that kind of a thing. And then there was a preventive action. So immediate action and then the preventive action. So preventive action was the development of the vaccination and so on, right? So that is the case that eventual. So any action needs to be considered not only keeping immediate temporary effects, but as eventual solutions. So both of them, both the immediate as well as the preventive actions, both of them are the valid course of action. The course of actions must be administratively implementable. That is, it is practically possible. It is feasible. Okay. Now, practical that I've already talked about. Right? Let's get into the mode of solving the question. I think this is one more slide. Yeah. So that is the case. So extreme steps without warning. So banning something, not a valid course of action. Canceling, not a valid course of action. Firing, suing. Okay. So extreme steps are generally avoided. Okay. Similarly, excessive generosity is also avoided. Okay. So giving something as a free, okay, exception, very rare cases. Okay. So you can give something as a free or something when there is a dire situation like natural calamities, disasters, pandemics, etc. Then in that case, you can ask for the freebies, but not in a general case. It is the freebies are not considered as a valid course of action. Right? So this is how the question looks like in the paper. Let's see. The options again remains the same. Course of action 1 is strong, course of action 2 is correct, and so on and so forth, right? So a large number of engineering graduates in the country are not in a position to have gainful employment at the present, and the number of such engineers is likely to grow in the future. Now, this is a one superb question, and students often get into the trap of it because of their assumptions. Okay, so when they read that, what at one go you must have realized that the students are unemployed. Okay, so the one go of the reading of it, the statement may come across to you as that the students are unemployed. But is this the case? What is the actual problem? A large number of engineering graduates in the country are not in a position. They are not in a position to have gainful employment. So that means that there is an employment, but they are not capable. Okay, so the problem is their capacity. The problem is not unemployment. That is the reason I was telling you that when it comes to the verbal reasoning, read your questions carefully, right? And see what is the main issue. The main issue is not unemployment, but the students are not capable. Then the course of action will definitely going to alter according to the problem. So the government should launch attractive employment generation schemes and encourage these graduates. This in case if you feel that the problem is unemployment, but the problem is that the engineering students are not capable. So this happened due to the proliferation of the engineering colleges in the country and thereby lowered the quality of the engineering graduates. Those colleges which are not equipped to impart quality education should be closed down. Okay. Right? So this is actually your correct course of action. So here the answer is only course of action 2 is strong. Right? Let's move to the next slide. Now, there has been an unprecedented increase in the number of successful candidates in this year's school living certificate exam. So, what is the school living certificate exam? Is generally your 12th class, right? So, now there has been an unprecedented increase in the number of successful candidates in this year. So, let's say every year there are 2 lakh students who appear who let's say get into the colleges. Now this year the number has increased to 3 lakhs. Okay, so what can be the course of action? The government should make arrangements to increase number of seats of intermediate courses in existing colleges. This is actually the correct course of action. Now the government should take active steps to open new colleges to accommodate all these successful candidates. Now, is this not the correct course of action? Why this is not the correct course of action? Because the government should take active steps to open new colleges. Is it practically possible? So there has been an unprecedented increase in the number of successful candidates in this year. So the candidates have increased. So now, within such a short span of a time, is it even practically possible for the government to open new colleges? What they can do is that they can actually increase the number of seats in the existing courses of the colleges, okay? But to open itself a new college is a challenge in itself, right? Secondly, what is the issue is that, what if in case if the number decreased next year? What will going to happen to the infrastructure? What about the revenues? Okay, and hiring of the teachers and everything, is it practically possible? So it's not practically possible, hence not your answer. So the correct answer is only course of action 1 is correct, right? Let's get into the next. So there is an unprecedented increase in the number of increase in the migration of villagers sorry, to urban areas as repeated crop failure has put them in precarious financial situation. Now let's understand what is the core problem here, okay? There is an unprecedented increase sorry, excuse me. So there is an unprecedented increase in the migration of villagers to urban areas, okay? So they are migrating from rural to urban areas. Now, why they are migrating? Because there is a repeated crop failure and there is a financial strain, right? Now, the course of action 1 says the villagers should be provided with alternate source of income in their villages, which will make them stay put. Absolutely correct. Okay. So the problem is an unprecedented increase in migration. So how can I stop this unprecedented increase in migration when I'm actually giving them the opportunity in their own areas, in their own villages? Okay. And secondly, it is also targeting this crop failure also. So they are provided with alternate source of income. Okay. So it is a twin-edged sword which is working on migration also, plus their financial strain which happens due to the crop failure. Now, the migrator villagers should be provided with jobs in the urban areas to help them survive. So, what if in case I'm giving them the jobs in the urban area? So, what I'm doing, I'm all the more promoting a migration. So, this is actually increasing the problem. This is not solving the problem. Hence, this is not my answer. Right? So, last few questions. Next is the assertion and reason, which we're gonna take it up in the next video. So, I hope you learned something. And in case if you have any queries and doubts, please feel free to ping us. And yeah, we are more than ready to give you with more questions of practice. So let us know in case if you are interested. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening and stay confident and stay safe and all the best for your exam. Thank you guys.